Okay. Alright, so basically, like I was just saying, we're going to be having our final on Monday. That's when your class is supposed to have it. It'll be online. It will be from 11 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. Just like the midterm, you're going to have an hour to complete the 20 questions. And if there is more, just like in the midterm, just consider it extra credit. To help you guys out. We'll go ahead and review for that final on Friday. I'll also be filming it, so if you're not in Group A or whichever, then you can certainly watch the review online. Okay, so we just got through with a lot of the things that happened underneath Ann Richards, including the promotion of the first black as well as female Texas Rangers. And a very important guy during this pivotal period was Lieutenant Governor Bob Bullock. He was a guy that was able to get things done. And she basically was governor of Texas. Oops. Well, she initially signed it. But then she goes against George Bush. And Bush is able to win a victory, although narrowly. And a lot of people point to, this is when Texas became a Republican state rather than a Democratic one. It had always been strongly Democratic. This had actually begun in 1961 with the election of John Tower. And I've actually heard other Texas historians say this came earlier, back in the 70s. But this is when it's official. Republican, conservative views socially and economically, and they have a very laissez-faire or hands-off attitude towards government. Then we have a further decline of the oil industry. It's because basically OPEC is opened back up, it's in full production. By 1986, what had cost $50 a barrel in 1980 was down to only $7 a barrel in 1986. Now, why is this such a big thing for Texas? Well, first off, you have 250,000 Texans working in the energy fields, and the state of Texas lost a lot of revenue. What had been 26.5% of our tax income in 1983 was only 7% of our tax income by 1993. This impact on oil, of course, affected the banks, affected real estate markets, and it's not until 2008 was Texas able to regain its boom prices. But a huge thing was passed nationally that helped out Texas tremendously, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Basically opening up international markets. We removed the trade barriers between Canada, America, and Mexico. And you see a blossoming of trade along the U.S.-Mexico border. Difficulties that arise with this, however, is what is the cost and the effect of all this traffic now on our highways. The fact that Mexican trucks don't have to meet the emission standards that neither American nor Canadian trucks do. And you see a proliferation or a huge building maquiladoras along the border. These are factories that basically hire women. They don't hire men. And basically it's like the Lowell factories up here in the U.S. during the 1800s where women were hired. They pay them cash wages, just like there. The maquiladoras are paid cash wages, so a lot of the money can go back to their parents. They're under strict control, everything like that. Now, what's the effect on Texas? On one hand, is great. But for America, it's not so great. Because now our farmers are in competition with much cheaper agriculture. as well as a lot of the factory jobs up in Detroit, are lost as they basically bulldoze factories up in Detroit and open up factories down in Mexico. And there's a very, very good movie about that, documentary, called Roger and Me, about Michael Moore going to find Roger, which is, because it's still around. I don't know how it's able to scrape through, but it does. Was a candy maker here in Texas. It's still around. But basically, Mexico doesn't have subsidized sugar prices. So their candy, Lucas and all that stuff, is incredibly cheap. And, you know, it's hard unless you're a huge monopoly like Hershey's or Mars to be able to compete with that. But it is raising the quality of life for many, both in Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. We also have post-war, Cold War base closures. Bell Helicopter and Lockheed Martin, even though they remained in Fort Worth, they had to reduce their sizes, as did Raytheon, which has, I know it has 3 sites here in Dallas. One right next to a TI and 2 others not that far apart. You also had like Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth close. Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio close. And what's interesting with Kelly Air Force Base is they actually turned that Air Force Base, they gave it back to the city. And so the city has been trying to redevelop that area. And also down in San Antonio, you have BAMC, or the Brooks Army Medical Center, that basically they closed down some state hospitals to build a huge complex in San Antonio. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is down here, these 2 are the Fletcher houses. Basically, they're houses that have been house veterans that come back from the war that are like amputees and stuff like that. So it gives them a place where they can learn to readapt and reintegrate back into society after the loss of their limbs, where they can have a better life. And of course, as you can guess, when you're closing down Air Force bases, that takes that huge economy out of the city that it's located in. Kind of like the effect of closing down the automobile plants up in Flint, Michigan. Oh, and to my knowledge, Flint has never recovered. Detroit, it's recovered a little, not much. Meanwhile, in Texas, we also have to kind of diversify. We have a growing tech industry. Like in the 1980s, TI came out with their own personal computer, TI 99-4A, that took cartridges in there, and if you were really cool, you had an audio tape drive that you could record things on. And my older brother and I had one of those, and we learned that if you pressed play on the tape machine, and you didn't hold it down all the way, but so it would play it faster, it would load the information faster. So if you ever find one of those at a garage sale, you learn the trick. We also have compact. This goes out of business. TI says it's not worth money doing that, but 3 of the guys that worked on that system go and form Compaq. Also Dell, Advanced Micro Devices. Some of y'all might have those processors in your computers, the AMD. Motorola with cell phones, Intel, IBM, Sun Microsystems. And guys, I just found out yesterday, Hewlett Packard is taking their world headquarters to Houston. So, once again, also we tried, there was a whole big government bondoogle about superconductor that they were going to build down in Waxahachie. And it really is sad because they spent $16 billion on it. The facility's still there, but they never laid down the superconductor, and the financial support for it went away. Also, we have NASA, which remains a driving force in technology, not to mention the military. Which, have any of y'all ever been on a military base or were in the military? Anyone? They always have the most up-to-date technology. And I taught classes out there. I was at college. That's where I had some dual credit classes when I lived down in San Antonio, at Lackland, as well as Randolph Air Force Base. Environmental issues. Well, guys, during today, water is becoming more and more aware. Basically, water rights, it used to be just like oil rights. That the owner, that was his. Well, then we come to a guy who owned a catfish farm down in San Antonio, Ron Pachek. And back in 1991, he dug an incredibly deep well into the Edwards Aquifer and was pumping out 40,000 gallons per minute for his catfish farm. Basically, that would have been enough to supply 250,000 residents of San Antonio. Basically, he pumped out 45 million gallons a day. And the city, he was forced to stop down because he didn't successfully complete his permit procedure. And then the city goes and buys up his rights and everything like that for $30 million. But this is something that, especially out in West Texas, is becoming more and more of a concern. Of course, what I also think is funny, I think it's sad whenever we in Dallas have to go on water conservation, yet all the water parks totally open. Totally still in business. It's like, wait a minute. The death of the Southwest Conference and the ongoing allure of Texas football. Well, guys, y'all are from Texas, so I don't have to tell you that basically here in Texas, football is community. There's a lot of places, especially out in West Texas, where they roll up the sidewalks on Friday night because it's high school football game, and guys on the I mean, that's what makes you a hero in the small town if you're on the high school football team. And there are some guys who, because they stay in that town, might never leave the kind of glory that it gave them. Well, anyway, since 1914, here in Texas, we had the Southwest Conference, where all the Texas teams were, including Arkansas. And we had inner rivalries, UT and A&M. And that lasted, but by the 1970s, we have competing conferences that are even doing better than us. So we try to merge with the Big 8, and we do and form the Big 12. So that's how the Southwest Conference died. And then when UT said, hey, we want all the television rights, A&M said, me no likey, me getting out of here. And they went and joined the SEC, which is sad. And being a Longhorn, I miss the games between us. Did you get it? Did you get it? Then we have two Texas tragedies. Stevie Ray Vaughan and Selena. Basically, Stevie Ray Vaughan was born in 1954 in Oak Cliff, Texas. He rose to prominence with his ability to play the guitar, especially being a studio artist for musicians like David Bowie. On his Let's Dance album, that's Stevie Ray Vaughan playing the guitar. But as his fame and popularity grew, he sank deeper and deeper into alcohol and drugs. Until finally his friends said, hey Stevie, you need to clean up. So he went to basically go ahead and address that problem, and he did dry out. And after he successfully dried out, 1 year later, he dies in a helicopter crash on August 27th. And that's a real loss for music, not just Texas. Next was Selena. She was born in Lake Jackson back in 1971. She was a big Tejano and conjunto artist. She started out with her band in high school. They got noticed, they were playing quinceañeras and everything like that. They got noticed. By 1994, she wins a Grammy. In 1996, she signs a record deal with EMI, where she gets more than $1 million. And then we have the president of their fan club, Yolanda Saldívar, who basically had been embezzling from Selena. And when she was confronted and fired, Yolanda took that very hard, went to her car, got her pistol, and came back and killed Selena. Which caused a lot of outpouring of grief from especially young Tejanos and Tejanas here in Texas. So the emergence, did you get all that? Here comes that. The emergence of a new Texas. Well, guys, basically in the 90s, the Republican Party becomes the dominant party here in what had been a stalwart Democratic state since the Civil War. With lowering oil prices, even though they're going back up. Yay! But with the lowering oil prices, basically we had to diversify our economy even more. And you see that consumer spending and the service sector was outdistancing agriculture and ranching. And guys, people still came to Texas. And we're becoming more urbanized and diverse than ever. Indeed, I think we are in the top 5 states in Muslim immigrants to us. We have a large homosexual population. Every single place is booming in the people that we're getting, which is incredible and awesome. Indeed, this last census, we just beat out New York State, so now we're number 2 in population, beaten only by California. And now some people think that even though the Republican Party was dominant then, and probably up to 2010, Democrats are starting to gain more power. Which is good, because competition's always good. Brings out the best of both parties. And don't cry, dry your eye. That's just the silly thing that it starts on. All right. So, like I said, our final is going to be on Friday. No, it's going to be on Monday the 7th. We're going to be reviewing on Friday.